Now. Welcome, everybody. This is Essential Living and the Essential Lifestyle and Wellness with Essential Oils. My name is Kara Blattman-Rock. I'm the founder of doTERRA in Israel, and I'm in New Mexico building a doTERRA community here as well. And I'm excited to have Amanda Porter on our call, and Hannah's going to be kind of introing her more, but I don't have your new book that you're talking about, Emotions and Kids Oils, but I have your other books that are my Emotions and Oil Bible, I call it. Like we all do. Everybody from doTERRA is like, this is our Bible. Like I should have it here right now. Right here. This is one of them. And this is my Essential Oil Bible. I really refer to it for everything, every day. So I love it. And Amanda Porter, you are the author and the creator of this, and you're just amazing, the way that you put language to our emotions, first of all, and then connect the essential oils and the rights. I'm like getting teary-eyed right now just thinking about it. You've just been such a gift. And this contribution that you've given to all of us is such a gift. So thank you so much for being here. And with no delay, I'm going to hand it over to Hannah Frazen, one of my partners and healthy addicts to essential oils. We're healthy addicts to essential oils, right? And I want to introduce you so that you can give more acclimates to our beautiful Amanda Porter that's here.
Awesome. Well, it is my extreme pride and pleasure to welcome you to our doTERRA Israel call. Amanda is a professionally trained facilitator in emotional healing and author of the best-selling books, Essential Oils for Emotional Healing, that we all love, and now her latest book, Emotions and Oils for Kids, hooray, hooray, published originally by Enlightened Healing and sold over 500,000 copies worldwide, the original book, with, it says in here 7 editions, but it's 8 editions, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, they've now
it says 9.
We're on 9 like now.
Yeah,
that
right.
Yeah.
Amanda is passionate about helping people survive and then thrive thanks to emotional healing, and she's also the mother of 2 phenomenal children who are her very best teachers and continually inspire her to dig deeper and become more. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about how that relationship played into the creation of this book and your journey over the past 1.5 years in this crazy time. And I'm just so grateful that you're here. Like, we missed out on convention and all of that, but here you are with us. So it's amazing, and we're so happy. And whoever has questions after, you can stay on. Amanda has agreed to stay on and answer our questions. So super special, and stay tuned.
Thank you, Hannah. I am so honored to be here. It was my privilege. Hannah actually invited me to. We did an event in Jerusalem 2 years ago, right? Yeah, it was 2 years ago now, and I have a deep love of Israel. It was a really life-changing time for me to be there. And so it's my privilege. I'm excited to be with you as a team and to talk about these essential oils that we all love so much. So one thing I didn't ask you at the beginning, Kara, do you want any slides for this, or do you want me to just talk through kind of what would you prefer?
You can do slides.
Okay. All right, then I'll share my screen so you can. I always have slides and visuals and things, so I will just go ahead and share the screen, and then we'll go from there. Let's see. Okay, you can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as Hannah said, I don't even need to say it. I'm the author of the book. You saw it when I was actually in Israel. I think it was a week or 2 before our event. I actually signed the papers on the company and transferred the ownership, and I was in a lot of grief, and that transition was rough for me because I didn't feel like I was all completely in choice. I had 3 other business partners, and there was decisions to be made about that, and I didn't quite know like what the future was going to hold for me and this work that I had, you know, worked and put my heart and soul into. And I remember feeling such love from everyone and such support for the work that I do. And I've been privileged that things have solidified more, and I you know, solidified my role in continuing to voice the essential oils. And now, as Hannah was pointing out, the name has changed, as you can see on the graphic, in addition to emotions and essential oils, and now it's published as Essential Emotions. So that's the only difference, but this all the same. And as she already said, I speak and I write, and I love to do this, and I love to talk about the emotions. So we can ask any questions that you have about the book or the differences. We can probably cover that after in the Q&A. So what I'd love to do is just a quick recap for those of you who haven't been to my events or seen me speak online, to just make sure that everybody is on the same page with how the emotional response process works, and then how aromatherapy plays into that, because I think it's really important to have. So let me just say, the is all it's kind of all heart. It's very much energy. It's very much from the heart. And I can talk more about how that process happened. But when you are talking to people in the world and trying to share the benefits of aromatherapy for emotional healing with others, it's important that you also understand the science behind it. So I'm going to give you a quick recap. I know Hannah and I have talked about this a lot. I know she's really, really versed in this, but not everybody understands how legitimate this process therapy is and how it works with our chemistry. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of that to make sure we're all kind of starting at the same page, and then we'll go into some more after that. So the foundational thing I always like to make sure that we're working from the same framework is that emotions are normal responses to the experiences of our life. It doesn't mean we always like that response, but it is normal to have that response. And so I'm always advocating for allow instead of trying to suppress that or change the way that we have been designed. The emotions, and they're vital, and they're also for our learning. So can you still hear me okay, Hannah? We still good? Okay, I had a little notice pop up.
Right.
So.
It was coming in and out a little bit, but you're good.
Okay. If there's an issue, just okay. Yeah, sometimes it goes in and out here in the mountains. So if there's something, an issue, flag me, let me know. But the other thing too is that emotions are chemicals. So the actual emotions themselves are chemicals, and they're chemical signals that happen. So we have the feelings, but there's a whole bunch of chemistry happening behind every one of our emotions. And the great thing about that is those chemical signals can change, and we can do a lot to change those chemical signals. So like I said, we're trying to redirect our emotional stream. We're trying to flow with it, and we definitely don't want to dam that up and stop that progress of our emotional waters. We just want to be able to navigate them and work with them. So that's my approach to working with emotions in general, and also with the essential oils, which I'll bring in a second. So the neurochemistry of aromatherapy, and you see this graphic here on the side of your screen, it shows kind of how this process works with emotions. So first of all, you have all of our experiences are brought in through our senses. So we have our sight, our sound, our smell, our touch, and these are all routed into the limbic center, the emotional seat of our brain, the amygdala. This is all Grand Central Station, the limbic seat for our emotions. So it's coming and going, and it's receiving all of these signals. And then this processes the information, and the emotional reaction is what comes out of that stimulus. And when it catches up to it actually routes into the amygdala, all of our experiences first. So we've been designed to have an emotional reaction.
You're going out.
And decision making. Did it go?
Yeah, but you're back.
Oh, okay. So it does route into the prefrontal cortex, but it's slower. Right? It's a slower process to route over to the prefrontal cortex to have that decision-making process catch up. Talk into this. So this is a graphic I had made up just years and years ago about how, because at the time it wasn't popularly known. People didn't talk about this. They didn't understand how aromatherapy works. And so I had this graphic made up to just make a really simple visual of why aromatherapy works. And so you have that stimulus. So now we have an essential oil bottle. I actually want to hold one just for fun. So we have the essential oil bottle. What do I have? Aroma Touch. And you inhale that. So this is the olfactory, right? So you have that stimulus coming system. And, you know, we don't have to go deep into this today, but there is, as you know, the aroma molecules, they bind with receptor sites, triggering the olfactory nerve, and it stimulates different things inside the limbic center of the brain. So that's where it's routing it into the brain. That's the little brain image there for interpretation. That's that grand central station coming and going. And then the great thing about this is that this sends a positive signal. So when it's received into the brain, and the amygdala is making this decision about this stimulus, this is positive. And so then it elicits action. And so from essential oils, you get the stimulus of different neurochemicals that we know and love, like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. So serotonin is a feel-good neurotransmitter, right? Dopamine, or oxytocin is a binding hormone. You're actually and then that goes through the body, and finally we end up with that physical response. And that's when you inhale. So when you're watching this from the outside, you inhale an oil, and in just that amount of time, you can feel that your nervous system starts to settle, right? You have that relaxed feeling, and it's because those chemicals out of, so most of us live in sort of that fight or flight mode too often. We're go, 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 decisions to be made. And so we're pushing a lot of chemicals like stress hormones, like cortisol, through our system. And we tend to be ramped up and living a lot of time in our sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. And so when you inhale an essential oil, you're triggering through this process the release of chemicals that are basically the antidote to those stress chemicals. So like serotonin, a feel-good hormone. It just sends out through your body, and you have that sense of well-being. And so it really does change the chemistry on a physical, emotional, and energetic level. So that's the basic overview of the aromatherapy response process. I always like to cover that. Any questions about this process while we're here before we move on? Okay, good. I think everybody's on board with that. Excellent. So then let's talk about how this aromatherapy works for kids. So as you know, the book is, the original book, sorry, the Emotions and Essential Oils, now Essential Emotions book, is very much geared for an adult sort of worldview with context. So you usually have to sort of interpret that for younger audiences, because there's some pretty emotional concepts, deep emotional work. That was the purpose for the book. And as a parent, like I said, you work with that depending on your child's ages. But I knew, like Hannah said, I talked about this during the launch, that 2020 was a pretty rough year for me and for most of us. And so through that process and through kind of the struggle that we had as a family, I had a lot of health problems come out of, getting a virus in 2020 and dealing with the long-term side effects of that and different things happening, and my kids having all the stress of that. It's not unusual. We're talking about school being out right at the beginning. And so I was wanting to address the children, and in a way that would reach them right where they are, so that they could have some investment and some tools that are right there on their level. So I wrote this next book. So the thing to remember as we're kind of transitioning from what we talked about with the neurochemistry is that sorry, I'm going to move this over. The kids' brains, because they're still developing, they have they have the same neurochemistry, right? That's also happening. But fortunately for children is that the patterns aren't so ingrained, right? They don't have a lifetime of repeated beliefs or repeated negative experiences. They're still fresh, right? They're still young. And so they're more malleable. And so you're actually doing a little less healing when you're talking about kids. So this is this opportunity to help them get those neural pathways for dealing with their emotions headed the right direction from the beginning, just like you would teach any other skill, right? So you're going to, because we all have big emotions and some of us weren't taught what to do with them, right? But then you have children and you're going to teach them, this is what you can you have. So pulling up old road tracks and more of laying down tracks for them to have a successful emotional future. Oh, let's see.
You want to go back? Actually, we lost you. We lost you in that with the neural pathways. You froze for a bit.
Oh, okay.
They're
so I was just saying that you, with the, yes, so they're more malleable. And I might have to move if we're having, out here in the mountains, there's certain places at different times. We don't know what's going to happen. But basically, you're working on setting up, instead of having to pull up old train tracks of all these negative patterns developed over a lifetime, like you do with adults, you're actually to lead on the tracks. So are you still there?
Yeah.
We lost you at that same part.
I'm going to move.
Yeah, because we're still at the beginning, so we could probably we're gonna get all this.
Yeah, we can't lose you right now.
Yeah, this information is awesome, so we want to.
Okay, perfect. Really so it just flagged me down, but I think I'm in the right positioning for like the tower. So let me know. We'll just sit here. It'll be just fine. So you heard the thing about train tracks, or did you not hear the thing about train tracks? Okay.
Yes, we heard that.
So you're trying to develop the right tracks for their emotional future, because you can train the brain to react positively even to negative emotions, to know that there are positive solutions to their negative experiences. And so that's the goal with kids in aromatherapy. Yes, we're going to talk about more what you want to do in sort of that immediate time frame, but we're also looking at creating patterns for their lifelong development and them being able to process negative experiences in their life in a more healthy and healed way that maybe we were taught, where we have to pull up all those old tracks and then try again. Okay. So the great thing though is, besides the teaching, as we know from working with adults as well, the brain, neuroplasticity is a gift. The fact that our brains can change, that we can pull up negative, programming and rewrite our story. And so even though they aren't entrenched, I think that I mentioned this before, I don't think that anyone got out of the last year without some form of trauma. It's been a trying experience for most people, and there's definitely things that need to be overcome for everyone. So if there has been traumatic experiences in their life, we can also use this to help rewrite a brighter chapter for them moving forward and give them the tools to do that. So that's why I wrote this book, Emotions and Essential Oils for Kids. And just to recap my purpose behind it, and I'm going to give you some more detailed information on this call about how I would like for you to use it. But the purpose overall is to just start the conversation. Because in order for us to heal our emotions, we have to actually talk about them. And sometimes it's hard to have that conversation and we don't know where to start. And this gives that conversation starter in a place to actually talk about our emotions as well as theirs. So it creates that safe place. It helps to self-identify emotions. I've mentioned this before, but there are so many studies being done about the ability to identify your own emotions, that level of self-awareness, and setting up for success in life. So it's a skill we definitely want to teach our kids. It's part of their emotional intelligence quotient. And so self-identifying is something I've built into the book as a process, because we want to make sure that we do that for kids. Also to help them find their own positive solutions. Them going through the process and finding positive outcomes to their experiences is what trains the brain that negative things can be overcome and that we can find our own solutions. The other purpose was to create connection between you and your child, or the child that you love, grandchild, someone else's child, but to create some connection. There's been too much isolation and separateness, and we need opportunities for connection. And also to model self-care. So most of us aren't that great at modeling self-care, because we are in the mode of caring for other people, taking care of other people, and self-sacrifice a lot of times. And so there's a virtue in sacrificing for other people, but there's a limit to where you don't actually teach, children who are watching you how to care for themselves in that process. And so I wanted to build this in where we teach them how to care for themselves, because we may not be modeling that all the time. So let's teach them some skills about how you can take care of yourself. Here's a really simple way to address what's happening with you. So that's part of the purpose for that. So let's get into how to use. I had to open the window so there was a direct shot. So there's a little bit of breeze happening now with this. But let's talk about how to actually use the book. And I'll just have this windy effect going on here. That'd be great.
It's beautiful.
You can still hear me okay though, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Beautiful.
So I did more of this in the launch, but there's the individual oil descriptions that are kid-friendly in the book, so that you can talk through those things on a very kid-appropriate level. There's these positive affirmations, how to use it, and there's also some visualizations and other activities that you can do with the child to help that process along. Hold on just a second. Now, the thing that I've done to try and simplify this is that whenever we're feeling emotionally compromised, adults or children, but especially children with less experience of, multi-complicated life experiences, we want to keep the choices simple. And so when you're having an emotional reaction, you're feeling emotionally compromised, I want it to be simple. So I decided to design the kit just off of the kids' collection. And just so you know, there are alternates available. I did create blends, kind of DIY blends that will fit the bill if you don't have the kids collection, and I can email them to you if you're interested. But I love the kids collection. I think it's a beautiful kit. It's well designed, and emotionally I think it's amazing. But if the investment in that's an issue and you have some other sort of staples around, I've created blends so that you can, because what you need to do then is you need to mix up a blend and put the word brave on it, and you can still use it with the book. So it keeps that across the board, so we don't have to have everyone necessarily with the same investment in the entire kit. So if you have one or two, or you still want to have that process with the book, there's a way to do that. So we can talk about that more later. But so how to use the book as well. So we've got the oils. We do want to create some ownership. And I use this phrase that it's their instruction manual for their toolbox of well-being. So they've got the book, it's their instruction manual. They've got the oils, and they have this toolkit. So they know that they can go to this when they have a situation happening to have their well-being, to take care of themselves, to address what's going on. But the thing to remember is that, like all people, kids love choice. We love to feel autonomous. We love to feel like we're independent. And so make sure that you begin this process with choice and have them choose into it. And not that you're prescribing it because they're so out of hand or that kind of a thing. We want to help them choose in and make sure it's a positive experience. And so to that end, I just want to recommend that you choose the right moment to present the book or the oils or this whole concept, so that you're doing this when the moment is right, meaning kind of before it's needed. So you don't want to wait for a meltdown to pull out the book and have that be the first experience, right? You want to get their engagement and excitement and say, hey, we have this new thing, we're going to do this, and let's look through the pretty pictures. They're very kid-friendly. As you can see, there's lots of kids' graphics in there, and the colors are bright, and they'll be excited. And then they'll have that buy-in, that choice
before we might turn to that in a harder moment. That makes sense. So the other thing too is just to remember to start with honesty. I am such an advocate for acknowledging what is and being as honest as is age appropriate with our children. And so I have to have the conversation with my kids a lot about what I fail with and how I didn't manage my emotions the way I would wish them to, or where I fell short. And so this is a conversation as well where this isn't about fixing them per se and what's wrong with them, but it's about the fact that we're both on an emotional journey and we both need tools to help us sometimes and to adjust our chemistry and to make us feel better. And so there's an honesty and a come from about the fact that I struggle too. And so I have these tools and you have these tools and we'll be in this together. And the other thing too is that the book is really, it's even though it's for kids and it's simplified, it's still a book that I wrote. And so I can't oversimplify emotional concepts to a point where there's no depth to them. And so kids don't buy the fact anyway when you just tell them to sort of think a happy thought, or just be positive or something. When they have a complicated emotional experience happening like the rest of us, you have to want to choose that solution. And so being honest about what is first is really critical. And that's part of the honesty. So, yeah, Hannah?
Question. How old are your kids?
7 and 6. Yeah. It took me a long time to get those kids, let me tell you. All my friends' kids are much older than that. And so it's been a great journey for me. It took me a long time to get them here. So yeah, they're kind of right at this age, which is nice for me developing the book, where because you do have to adjust it kind of on both ends. This book is really designed for kind of the under 12 audience, because once you hit the teenage years, in my experience, and every kid's different, but there's usually that sense that they want to be more a part of adult things and less geared towards things that are geared towards children. So, I mean, you know the child in your life and whether that's, where they are with that. But just in my observation, most of them sort of hit that age where they're like, I don't need children things anymore. So I just geared it towards the under 12s, but quite young, right? So the reason I chose to do these emojis, as you can see, is to help like non-readers. So you've got really young kids to help start to choose and self-identify. Because with my kids, I used to make faces for them when they were little and be like, okay, I can tell that you're upset. Is it this kind of upset? Is it that kind of upset? That kind of thing, to try and help them. And that helped because they don't have words. I mean, they kind of start with mad or happy, when they're young, but then it develops over time. So it was important to me, these emojis were to help them to be able to self-identify when we talk about simple words, but then obviously you'd help them read it, because the words under them, the emotion words, help them self-identify as well. And then we have the oil guide to help them choose, you can look at which oil you think might work best for them. So a couple of ways to use the book. We can have an aromatic intervention, or we can have mood choice. So when we have let's just start with mood choice. So when we have something coming up in life and we know, do they do spelling bees? Are they called spelling bees in Europe? Or are they called something else where you have to stand up in front of the class and spell something? No? Do they outlaw those? Because maybe they should be outlawed. I don't know. It's stressful, right? Carrie, you with me? Like, so we had these things when I was growing up, the spelling bees, where you had to stand up in front of the class and spell, and you're like eliminated, and like there's still this line going down. And I was actually pretty good at it, but it was stressful. Like, so you're kind of eliminating the rest of the class, and whoever's spelling, it's kind of a terrible concept. But anyway. And so if something like that were happening, or they had a presentation or something, and they know, like, I need to go into this with some confidence, you can do some mood choice there. In the table of contents, we put the oils and the oil name, like Brave, with the positive emotional state that they're looking for. So like courageous and empowered. So you can go there and say, okay, what oil should we get for you today before you have this big event? So there's definitely that option. But this graphic that I did, this is a 2-page, for those of you who have the book already, with the emotions, pictures, and the words, is more for that aromatic intervention, which is what we all need from time to time, and children especially, right? And so this is the how are you feeling page. And this is, like I talked about, it helps them verbalize those feelings. And I was reading studies when I was doing this about, because I've known about this, I've talked about this. That's why there was that big index of emotion words in the original book, right? Because I know that people have to verbalize these things and to help them process it to the best of their ability. But learning that process helps everyone. But there's been a lot more studies coming out about when you choose, like you verbalize the words and you try to choose what you're feeling and self-identify, it engages the prefrontal cortex. So again, you're getting this communication between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, and they're talking to each other. And that actually, just the process, I mean, no essential oils yet. The process of trying to verbalize how we feel, it downregulates the limbic system's emotional response. So when that's trying to fire off a really big situation, just trying to use your words, but let's, say it in a really nice way, really does engage a different part of our brains that starts to downregulate that overactive response. And also that engages choice and autonomy, like we've talked about for kids, super important. Let's keep them engaged. Let's have them do choice. They get to tell how they feel. It's really funny with my very verbal children. I don't know why they're so verbal. Maybe their mom likes to talk a lot. But when I get it wrong, when I try to help them, like, oh, it looks like you're upset. You want to talk about that? No. Okay, but it seems like you might be angry. And then I'll get, no, I'm frustrated. Okay, you're not angry, you're frustrated, right? And but it gives them that sense of choice. Okay, that's right. Then you're frustrated. Let's talk about that feeling. And it does something in the brain that's really beneficial. So that's part of the process.
Amanda, just a little cue in, and I don't want to interrupt too much.
No,
but
please,
like
please.
How you're speaking about kids, like we're coming from a generation of adults that didn't have this taught to them. And so by us taking on this choice of teaching this to our children, which I'm sure everybody on the call is going to do, it's teaching it to us too. Like, because just when you're talking about there's plenty of adults, myself included, that don't always identify our feelings, and then therefore engage that prefrontal cortex and start that down regulation, and so this is like when you put an age gap on 12, it really is, I'm going to start doing this for myself and all my kids 14 and up. I don't care.
No, I love that. As long as you can get anyone to choose in, please do. It's funny because when I showed my mom the first draft, so the grandma, and most of her kids our grandkids are in college now, except for mine. And she said, I'm going to use this book for me. Same thing. She was like, she was like, honestly, it was hard for me a little bit to get there. She's like, but the kids book, I get it. Like, I get what you're saying now. Like, I'm going to use the kids book. And I was like, great, Mom. Absolutely. Right. It's like, I can do this.
Because think about how many generations of adults didn't identify their feelings. Like, this is a brand new concept, really, I think.
It is. And the thing that I love about identifying and talking about this, Kara, really good points, is that it gives us this chance to change things in the generational line. Because we all have been taught different ways of expressing our emotions or not. If we stoic, we can't talk about it or whatever. But learning to self-identify is something that you can do regardless of what you were taught. It is something you have to learn, but there's kind of no cultural barrier there. Everybody can learn to do this, and we can teach kids to do this, and then they can still choose what they do with their emotional reaction. But we've taught them the skill set that will help in their lifelong process of trying to learn about their own emotions. So really, really good point. So just a couple of other things that I didn't talk about in the original launch that I wanted to share when I was putting together the bonus video, I just shared some of these concepts. I'm going to bring them in here. So I do, like I mentioned before, I do want this to be a time for sharing and relating and validating. That's my intention for sharing this with children. It gives you those things to discuss together, opportunities to connect in real, honest ways about the shared emotional journey, like I said. So, excuse me, this is, like I said, this is a time where, and I built in some cues, a couple of spots in the book to give you insight in what you can start talking about. And you relate a time that you made a mistake, that sort of thing, where you, and you actually have this journey, because that connection and that realness, that will go farther than any sort of less than outline that you could ever provide. That will give them that modeling for how you're okay talking about it now, even if you weren't before, right? Because you have the same programming, maybe. I'm not allowed to talk about this, but you can give this space that says we can talk about this now. And in this way, and we can both be okay. There's some, what page is that on? I think it's probably the 4th or 5th page in, that talks about 2 children, but adults can read this. There's a special note, and it talks about, if the people in your life didn't teach you it was okay to deal with your emotions, that's all right. We're going to start today. We're going to do this together, and you're building a skill and you're helping other people. And so that's all we can do. We can only start today and begin this process. So anyway, that's the premise for that. The other thing too, I wanted to say, make sure you do a check-in after you use that oil. So it says use Brave, it tells you how to use it. You've gone through the whole process. So after that, before you just close the book and move on with your day, intervention sorted, check in and reinforce the positive effect, because you still get all that benefit of emotional identification. So yes, there's the negative emotion sort of differentiation you're doing at the beginning, but helping them connect the dots from the beginning to the end. How did that make you feel? How did that go? What did you think? That also gives them a chance to learn to identify the positive and the good side. And that's equally important. And it also gives them modeling for empathy and validation, which is important as well, because again, those things need to be modeled. Like, kids are naturally empathetic, but they need to be modeled about how you do that, right? How you have those words and how you have those interactions. And then again, just to promote this one last step, these activities they're designed to create bonding neurochemicals to strengthen those relationships. So that it really does create, so you can, the hormone oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and also it creates that aromatic anchor. Is everyone familiar with that term, aromatic anchor? Okay, that one's pretty. I invented aromatic intervention, but I did not invent aromatic anchor. That is not me.
Wait, aromatic
so
anchor is,
I'm not just throwing jargon out.
define aromatic anchor.
So the aromatic anchor is when you take an essential oil and you combine that with an emotional experience, right? And so you're creating a new neural pathway. So like this, when you're teaching how to positively respond to a negative emotional experience and find a solution, when that's learning in of itself, right? The brain is going to say, oh, we can do that. Okay. And it learns something new this day. But when you take an essential oil and you partner the aroma with that learning, it creates what we call an aromatic anchor. And it's basically like exponential learning. So the brain, because it has this multi-sensory experience, the brain is going to remember that. It'll have a scent memory associated with the learning. And so it just makes it, the synergy of that makes it, it makes it go faster, it makes it go deeper, and it goes a long ways towards creating that neural pathway that will be there for life. So the essential oil is what we pair with the learning to make an aromatic anchor. That makes sense?
And then by using the oil, when you want to recall that experience, that's the anchoring, that you then pull out the oil to recreate that experience, to go back to that moment that you created.
Absolutely. So that creates the powerful recall, right? The scent recall creates the recall of the learning. So absolutely. Good ad. Thank you. Okay. I think Kara, okay, we'll move on then. So I do need to do okay, good. I do need to do just a little disclaimer, because we're talking about kids. So I want to just put out there some ground rules for working with kids. So kids need additional safety considerations for essential oils. So we need to choose child appropriate oils, and not all oils are recommended for children. So the great thing about the kids collection is they're pre-diluted, they're good choices. When you see, if you want my alternates list, I use a very low dilution, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But remember to do sensitivity testing for the kids, and understand it protects against the photosensitivity, like the citrus oils that can burn the skin, that kind of thing. So just make sure that you're conscious of that. And when you're using them, where, or under clothing, or what time of day, that kind of thing. And then also make sure you're properly diluting them for children and storing them properly. So in case you didn't know this, aromatherapists use a dilution percentage ratio. And so the emotional dilution, just so you know, is less, it doesn't have to be very potent. So you can use a lower dilution rate for emotional benefit. It's kind of like homeopathics, if you're familiar with that concept. Like the more you dilute down, the more potent it is energetically. Similar concept. So you don't need to use, if you're blending your own, really high dilution percentage when you're working on emotional concepts. So, and what's nice about the emotional kind of energetic dilution ratios is they're generally safe for children, not maybe brand new infants, but they're generally safe for children. And then my disclaimer, we can talk about it if you want, but that's my disclaimer information for you about working with kids. All right. So where to order, you can order the book and you want to get it. I would love for you to stay connected with me. I have an author Facebook page, the kind that you like, and on Facebook. And so if you want to join that, I'll be posting more videos and follow-ups and events and all those kind of things on there. And doing some more in-depth. Once I get the book launched, I'll be revisiting that and adding some more in-depth concepts, so you can stay connected there. And also, if you have any questions, email us and we'll get back to you. So any questions now at this point? I know that I went through that pretty quickly to make sure there was time enough for your questions at the end.
Okay, guys, don't be shy. You can unmute yourself and ask. So I will just say that really my connection with Amanda started when she saved my son's life by writing the first book. Because when I read the description of breathe, I never would have looked at breathe in that way. I had not looked at breathe in that way. And we really needed to use the emotional properties of breathe. And I was not choosing to use it on him because he hated the smell of mint. So I couldn't get near him, even though he had allergies and all these different things that happened. And then I read, he finally went to sleep one night. I said, I need to help this kid. This is torture. And what can I do? And I got to breathe air, and that's it. That's what we need to do. And so I started a routine with him every morning at 6:40 in the morning, putting the oils on his feet and accessing his brain with the big toe, and getting all his sinus congestion with the other toes. And every night at bedtime did the same thing, put his socks on. He didn't have to smell the mint, and totally changed his life and all of our lives in less than 3 weeks. So I'm forever grateful. And if anyone has questions, you should ask her. She's an incredible resource and kind and amazing.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, the Goddards, the people who own the company now, they've asked me to do a series of oil origin. I named it. I like names, but I'm calling it like oil origin videos, because they really want to have that information on video. And so I've been sitting with it recently and kind of like going back in the files, because originally that first book I had, my co-author was Daniel McDonald. It was his idea to do this. And so I was like, this is a long time ago. I had to go back to conversations and experiences and things that we did at the time before he stopped by the 3rd edition. So I did that onward by myself. But at the time we had so many things going on. And one of the things that I remembered, so it's interesting that you brought that up again, when I was kind of going back and being like, what about this oil would be worth sharing? Like the origin of the story. And Daniel had done a first draft, And we talked about it. He brought this to me and he was like, this is what I want to go with, kind of this original concept for Breathe. And I didn't have my voice at the time. My name was never on it. I was hiding in the background. I hadn't found my voice and was willing to show up and be seen yet. There at the very beginning of this journey. This was in 2010, I think, when we were having these conversations, or the beginning of 2011 maybe. And so I was like, okay, like I feel this part and this part, but it just kept niggling at me, Hannah. Like it was bugging me. I knew something in a soul level was wrong, but I was afraid of kind of contradicting him because he felt super passionate about this. And I was like, well, yeah, it does that, and it would not let me go. And so I ended up sitting with this for a long time. And there was a lot of prayer and a lot of sitting with this oil. And the story came to me so powerfully about the emotional story, about the grief and the love and that healing that comes through the lungs, undeniable. And it was funny because we had two other business partners, right? They were only on the business side. And then I came back to this meeting and I said, I have this thing to present to you. And by the time I was done reading, like what I had come to me, everyone was like, that's it. Okay, done. That's it. Because they could feel the resonance of it. It was beyond me. But it's always been an emotional one.
So that's the air and the breathe, everybody that's on the call.
Yeah.
That
was one of the first ones that I found
your voice.
Right. Yeah.
You were probably
I found my
breathe.
voice, and I advocated for myself. I'm like, this is the story and this is what needs to come forward. And so it's interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up because I was just remembering that. Thank you, Kara, for pointing that out. That it's air or easy. Is it air or easier?
It's breathe in the United States and it's air in Europe. It's air in Europe and breathe in the United States.
Okay, so, and this in Australia. Okay,
right, and this is from your book of the emotion, like what emotions you're working with when you're using air, or sometimes like Hannah's story was she was using. You were like, for me, when I'm going into this book, sometimes I think, okay, I want to use breathe. And then I'll look at why am I wanting to use it. It's like my tarot card of like oils, right? Like
why am I drawn to this
resonating?
Oil?
Why am I drawn with it? Or if I want to work on a specific emotion, then I look up the emotion and see what oil it is. So with the kids, since I just ordered it while you were talking about it. So I'm excited to get it. But I think we could use this time to maybe ask some questions around that. Cause like my curiosity is like, I feel like, well, I have a kid right here. She just put tamer on and calmer on. But my question is for, I think this transition and the time of the virus and everything that everybody's gone through, trauma or not trauma, like I feel like I went through it pretty easily, but like I think it was the toughest for the kids because I feel like they felt the most isolation. And my 14-year-old, especially, like being just a social teenager. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like there's been some crazy changes for her. So like what's like, since I don't have the book yet, like what would you like from your experience with the book say to do for a transitioning adolescent that's moving from childhood to like a teenager, and she's just like so emotional? Like,
well, one of the things that is a really good question. One of the things that I always recommend is that you, through this process of talking and digging deep, is that you try to find the root of their emotional story, because everybody's different. So some people are angry and we need to deal with their their anger and their angry feelings. Some people are sad. They've actually connected down into the sad and they feel loss and grief. And so if that's where they are, I mean, like we were talking about, air is an amazing oil. Breathe is an amazing oil for grief. Just keep that processing, keep it going. If they're feeling like pent up and those kinds of things, I would say, because that was a lot happening with people, is like they're pent up, they're held back. And so they just need some mood regulation, like teenage mood regulation. I would always recommend a citrus oil, actually, because it helps boost the mood so well and so consistently. So so we'll dig into how are you feeling. So when you look at the oils, Steady is one from the kids book and the kids collection that I would highly recommend for transitioning teenager, no matter what. It's a beautiful oil. It's got the tree blends. It's going to bring them down. But then because you have the book, because you're familiar with it, the big book, the Emotions and Essential Oils book, you can also kind of go into some other states and see how you can support. But Steady.
Yeah. I'm smelling it right now. Before you even said it, I was already smelling Steady. Steady. Just thinking about her. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, we remember. So I have a lot of empathy. Oh gosh.
Yeah, amazing. So if I want to open it up to anybody else that has a question about, because I mean, if you don't have the book, either book, because I know there's some people on the call that don't have either book. So if you have just a question for Amanda, because she's
like general oils and emotions. Oh, here I came and dropped this down. Sorry,
general oils and emotions. Like this is the time. We'll all learn from your questions. Please feel free to like unmute yourself and show us your pretty face or not.
Okay, there. I dropped the share. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
And so you sell the book from that website, but then we'll purchase the oils from Tara? Is that how it works?
So yeah, from doTERRA. The oils are doTERRA oils, Dolores.
Okay, and then we'll do that through you?
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it.
Okay, good. I'd like to order this for my granddaughter.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's doTERRA is my favorite brand of oils, and because of the purity of it. And so I based both of the books off of their brands. Obviously, things like orange oil, right, you could get anywhere, but I like doTERRA's oils because of their purity. And energetically, we did a lot of, just background for anyone who's interested, we did a lot of testing, like energetics and different things from the beginning. And it had the highest emotional vibration, so we honed in on that for emotional work. We liked the doTERRA oils were definitely the top. So we stuck with that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I have a question.
Miriam.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Amanda. It's kind of a two-part question. How do you bring oils to somebody who has like an objection to them and doesn't like the smell at all, no matter what kind of oil it is? And this person, well, I mean, she's my daughter-in-law. We're talking about kids here, but I mean, this is my son's wife, and she's going through grief right now. She just lost her father, and my son really loves the oils, but he can't use them in the house because she doesn't like them. So, is there any way to help her or help him without?
So one of the things that I would recommend for him is, have you seen one of those essential oil, like they're called inhalers, where you can put them on a little cotton wick and you can just smell them, but nobody else can. So it can be a very personal experience without, diffusing to the whole room. Have you seen that? I have one somewhere I can show you. Is anyone else familiar with that? Don't they have those? In Kara, you'd probably know.
I've seen, and Hannah, you've gotten them before, right? They look like little tampons.
Lipstick, kind of a tube. Yeah. It looks like a lipstick tube almost.
Yeah. There's all women on the call, so we could say they look like little tampon applicators.
Yeah, they do. You're not the first time. Or you could keep that visual. Don't tell your son. You won't want anything that resembles that. But you can get them in different color. You can get it in black, and you can, there we go. That looks like
that's hilarious.
There we go.
You're showing it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have these little, there's like a little cotton wick in it, and you open it up and you put the oils on that cotton wick, and then you close it up, and it keeps the scent sealed until you want to inhale it. Then you open up and you put the lid back on it. It doesn't affect anyone around you, but you still get the benefit of inhaling that essential oil. As far as your daughter-in-law goes, I want to dig into that, but I don't want to take up too much time. So is it the scent that bothers her, or is it the concept?
The scent, they're just so strong. You know, she likes perfumes and creams and, you know, Lalaine and things like that. Like, she's got tons of that kind of stuff. And I don't know, any scent, even the orange, lemon, lavender, like every peppermint, like everything. She just, it's like, no, it's just too strong. I don't like it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, one of the things you could, if she likes scented products, especially the chemical fragrances are potent as well as, you know, kind of toxic.
Right.
But maybe you could try something that's really very diluted. So take like a 10 ml bottle and put 1 drop of citrus in it. 1. See how that goes.
What,
you know, that kind
with
of thing.
A carrier oil with almond?
Yeah,
or
fractionated
oil?
coconut oil. Yeah, something like that. So
Okay.
a carrier oil, and put 1 drop in there. So, and you can see, is that too much? Is it not too much? If that's too much, then the emotional story is bigger than the scent. And we would need to chat about that more later, probably.
Right.
Yeah, there might be just some underlying resistance there, which we all have it in different areas of our life, but there might be just a non-oil way to try to work through that resistance.
Definitely. Okay. We could talk later.
Yeah, and in
Yeah.
addition to what you just said, Amanda, because we had this question last week, we have it almost every phone call, because we all love essential oils on this phone call, but there's people in our life that don't. And Yael answered it really well, Yael Holland, of just like, there's just, and maybe this is your brother's story that you shared at the beginning, where they may never come around to it, or maybe they will later, but there's like, we think essential oils are for everybody, and they really can benefit everybody. But if someone's choosing not to go there, it's like, you can't really push it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just bought a diffuser and oils for my son, and now he can't use it. He just got married like right before Pesach. So
I know. So the suggestion of the little diffuser for his nose is the way to keep it in his life, and then find someone else that will benefit from that diffuser gift.
And it is, Mary, I just want to validate, I've been years, like at family gatherings and everything, and there's no talking about essential oils there as well. I mean, this is my
a religion.
It's like cutting off an arm, right? Like, okay. And then like emotional topics come up and I'm biting my tongue, you know, because there's no talking about that either, right? And you're kind of like, no, that's fine. It's great. No, I'm not offering. I'm not pushing. And then, but you know, with patience and trying to respect everyone's boundaries and all of that, sometimes it comes around and sometimes it doesn't. So like I said, I don't know if you missed the story, but my brother at the beginning, did you hear that story right before we started recording?
I don't think so.
He's an engineering professor. So you think about how logical he is. The topic has been off limits for a very long time. And he called me yesterday and asked me about oils for anxiety.
Okay.
And I mean, this is what year? I mean, we wrote the book, the first one, and I mean, it's just 10 years later.
Wow.
10 years later that we're having our first conversation about it. So you never know. Just saying, you never know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Miriam. Thank you.
Cara, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
First of all, the question that you had was very interesting, because I also have a daughter who's, you know, going through a lot of emotional stuff. She's bat mitzvah now, and it's like she was always saying to me, "Mommy, don't worry, I'm not going to be a crazy teenager." But it seems that you know, we all get our share at some point. Anyway, so I have another daughter who's 9 years old, and she is afraid of starving. I know it sounds a little odd, but when she was younger, she had Shalit is whooping cough,
Yeah.
and I was afraid that you know, if she was going to make it through or not. And I was always, whenever she was able to eat, I was like, okay, let's fill her up as much as we can in case she like loses it later on. So I think she was left with this feeling, and I didn't even know it. And I just, you know, I guess you can call it anxiety or fear or something. And because she does have a tendency to never miss a meal and to even sometimes overeat. And I just, you know, we were thinking also on the emotional, more, you know, the side of the emotional, maybe we'd get her some, you know, help that way. But if there's an oil that can help her too, that would be great.
So I highly recommend, if you know about a situation with a child, and I recommend trying the oils and seeing if we're shifting, but I always recommend getting whatever help you need. So it's really important to, if you can actually have the gift of kind of knowing what the problem is. Like I said, kids shift faster, and it's better to invest in that when they're young. So if you don't see it shifting with the oils, please do get some help. And always you can use the oils on the journey, because they'll be energetically supporting the entire time and moving that work along, even if you have, even get her some help with someone else. But two things came to my mind when you were talking besides that. And that was that there is obviously some physical trauma kind of memory from that experience. When, as an asthmatic who, as a child, I nearly died many times, give my poor mom so much stress and heartache because of lung issues, right? And not getting enough to breathe, enough air to breathe. And there's a real connection to life through the breath. And when you have that sort of put into question about whether it's touch and go, if you're gonna be able to make it through that, there's always this sort of interesting connection to life after that. And you have to really choose in. And I didn't know that until much later. I spent a lot of time disconnected from my body. I still struggle with it. I have to like make it a priority, because I disconnected from my body through so much nearly dying in my life. And so one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that she's connecting and wanting to be here in the body. Grapefruit oil came to mind as one that really helps with connecting to the body. And when physical food and eating is one of the ways that we're trying to fill that hole in us, that lack of control and that fear, grapefruit is really good for that. Also, breathe, the air, as we talked about, that grief and that because this is where the root of kind of the trauma was during that experience. We always want to keep that moving and acknowledging that you're going to breathe in, you're going to choose into this life, you're going to breathe out, you're going to let that fear go, and you're going to use the grapefruit with it. The other thing that came to mind while you were talking is generational issues. There are so much shared experience that happens through our DNA that we pass down painful memories to our grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I mean, these kinds of things live through us in our DNA. And they're actually studying it now, for those of you who don't know. They're doing a lot of studies about trauma happening to great-grandparents that is now showing up. It actually affects the DNA. The great news about that is that we can work with that, right? We have the oils, we can shift those things, but sometimes that needs to be acknowledged. If there's a generational fear about life and whether life is safe or whether you're going to live through it, I would highly recommend that we look at that as well. because that might have just been the trigger that connected her to that memory. If that makes sense.
Oh, that's very interesting. Because I know I do pass something down to my kids, because I have a sister who died in a crib death. So I'm always like afraid of something happening to anybody. So yeah, definitely. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it very much. So the breathe and the grapefruit, where would you put that on their chest?
So
like on
always for grief, I keep it here, right on the heart, on the chest. Grapefruit, it's great for inhaling, actually. If you want to diffuse it, just sniff it from the bottle, put it in a favorite lotion, but you have to be careful with the photosensitivity for that. But inhaling that scent is a real strong, it's a real strong and potent one. And energetically, it's a really good one. So I'll go around breathing that or diffusing that as well.
Okay, and anything on the bottom of the foot or?
Yeah, like Hannah said, reflexology, you have the entire body on your foot and it connects to all the organs. So she was talking about putting air on the sinus points on like the toes. That's where the sinuses and lungs are a little bit further down on the foot. But any kind of like just like a foot massage with essential oils will distribute that. And it also is good for reflexology, kind of triggering those kinds of things. So if ever in doubt, put it on the feet and rub it in, get lotion, get a carrier oil, rub it around, and you're going to get a lot of good use out of that because there's so many reflexology points on the foot.
All right. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your question.
Okay.
I want to add one thing, Israela. I would also add frankincense on the heart space and the bottom of the foot, because frankincense really takes us into this moment while connecting us, with a very high source above, and it brings so much healing, and it's amazing. It's so powerful, but at the same time, it's so gentle. So it helps like bring that all together.
Okay.
And also because it's from the Ketoret that, I feel like if there's ever any like real thing that needs to happen, why did God tell us to burn frankincense on the altar? Like there's real power to it. So if you want to really shift something, like we have it. We're so blessed. So I would definitely add a drop of frankincense.
Okay, and like I should mix all the oils or like use them at different times.
I like layering, doing frankincense first. I feel like that's like the baseline. We like start with frankincense when you need frankincense. So I would put frankincense on the heart. It depends also how sensitive she is to the smells, because putting it on the heart, you really need to dilute.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
It's like going to be in her face. She will smell it. So I would do frankincense on the feet and frankincense diluted on the heart, and then diluted air on top of that. Which actually is how we cured my kids, Shayelet, was frankincense, and air.
Wow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you
and
so much.
frankincense, it sort of amplifies the effect of everything. So it's always, it's a go-to. Really good at.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you.
Okay. You can go ahead.
What's it fun?
There were two people who spoke at once. You want to go first?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I really I'm like blown away by the breadth of this talk. So thank you. I have a daughter who has a lot of anxiety and fear in general, but specifically about people experiencing pain or, fear about people being sick or dying or, I guess living in a global world where there's too much information hitting kids all the time. So she just is extremely sensitive. She doesn't like to hear stories about wars, even in like historical context, comes up with studies. So it affects her a lot. like she has a fear of going to classes where they're going to talk about things, you know, like so it's a daily struggle for her to handle the anxiety and the fears. It could be a generational trauma thing. I have no idea, but I just want to know what you recommend for giving her coping tools.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the same thing stands for generational trauma, obviously. And I know that you all have experienced there in Israel some trauma recently as well. So it seems like there's a never-ending source, as you said, of trauma and people getting hurt and things happening in the world that are very much out of our control and feel overwhelming and feel very scary. So the anxiety we can deal with separately because there's lots of great anxiety oils. I mean, Kara was talking about adaptive. They made a blend for it. It's amazing. But bergamot has been studied and studied and studied for anxiety. You know, there's so many oils that are actually great for anxiety. So let's just put that to the side for a second. And one of the things that I was feeling when you were talking is about the need for her to feel safe, because she's being an overly sensitive soul, heart wide open. I get that as a kid, and it's a hard thing to be able to function in the world when there's so much threat that can happen. So one of the things that I have used, especially with children and or anybody who feels really sensitive and exposed, is to work on establishing their boundaries as well, because they need to work on developing a little bit, not walls, not brick walls, but safety bubbles, if you will, some safety barriers where they kind of feel contained and not constantly exposed to everything coming at them. And one of the exercises that I've done with clients, I mean, who've been, I don't have my personal clientele anymore, but that's how I got into this work, is I was working with people in my personal private practice. And one of the things that we would do is use an essential oil that's good for boundaries and do a visualization like every day before she goes to school, right? So I've used tea tree. So it's called tea tree there, not Melaleuca, right? Is it tea tree? Okay.
No, it's Melaleuca
Is it
in
Melaleuca?
Europe.
Okay, sorry.
They changed it.
So Melaleuca.
Oh, they changed
yeah,
it. Okay, so it's tea tree
okay.
now. It's back to tea tree.
So whichever one that is from Australia, that one is one that will do where you, like, I will put a drop on the head, let's say, or on the feet if you're going to go to school, because it doesn't smell great. And you're going to imagine sort of putting this barrier, like this essential oil is creating a scent barrier around you, and you're safe on the inside. And actually, I have that exercise in Stronger in the book, where you're kind of putting this safe place around you and making that shield kind of go up around you, because we need some distance between it. And a lot of that is a mental processing thing of not becoming numb and not walling everyone out, but because when you're overly open and exposed, you need a boundary. On Guard was the first oil I ever did it with, was creating a boundary in a sense. So you can put it on the feet before you put your socks on, and have them do the visualization that's like, okay, the shield is going up. I have this invisible barrier, things that can hurt me on the outside, because even though there's a sensitivity there, which is beautiful, the fear is in her that she's not safe, right? That could be inherited, that could be from whatever experience, and that makes you over connected to the danger in everyone around you or for everyone around you. And so if we could work on some boundaries and helping her feel safe and not so enmeshed with the global pain, which is a tall order, but every little bit helps. And then you start addressing the anxiety. When you start to feel this way, let's have, we'll have a little inhaler like the one we talked about that you can just pull out, give a little sniff, kind of bring that, again, it'll signal those neurochemicals to calm that overactive, that fight or flight response that she flicks into, right? So we're doing a boundary visual like the beginning of the day, and we're going to give her some anxiety kind of helping oils, or anxious states oils, I should say. that she can turn to just bring that chemical response down, to train her brain to bring, because once she hears about something, the adrenaline, the cortisol, all that is generating with that fear emotion. So if we can address the chemicals themselves, calm down, put her back into the parasympathetic nervous system where she goes back into rest in her safe place, it'll help train her brain that that it's okay to bring those chemicals down and to normalize. Any questions about that?
So you're saying that tea tree oil is a good one, On Guard is a good one, and Stronger is a good one for doing those in the morning, and that bergamot is good for, in general, for
So good.
anxious feelings.
Yeah, bergamot, balance, adaptive. But like I said, bergamot, lavender, there's so many of them that have been studied that they will induce that state to bring down that anxiety level. So I would just find her favorite smell. Like give her a few options for the anxiety one and say, which one do you like better? Because whatever one she resonates with, put that in the little inhaler and have her just do that when she starts to feel like it's overwhelming her system.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
Amazing. Are there any other questions? Amazing.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to say thank you. And I really tried to get this book for a long time. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
I live in Europe, in Barcelona, in Spain.
Barcelona. Yes. Yeah.
So I find it like 3 months ago from Portugal. So I order it and I like use it almost every day.
Oh.
So I want to say thank you, and I definitely gonna get the kids' book for sure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And I was actually, funny enough, before all this happened, because I didn't know what I needed to do until 2020, but I was in Spain in December of 2019. And that is where this visual came to me of the emojis, that page where they choose the emotions and the oils below them. I was in Spain and I saw this thing and I didn't know what was coming. Well, I learned what was coming later, yeah. But so I have this connection to this thing because it was like kind of announced into my life, if you will, when I was in Spain. So it's kind of fun. It's interesting that I'm glad that you're here. That's a very full circle moment for me.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? We're good? Thank you. Perfect.
Amanda, thank you.
Well, I do really appreciate, oh yeah. Oh, thank you, Hannah.
Been amazing.
Obviously.
And thank you for spending so much time with us.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure, really.
Yeah, amazing. And for everybody on the call, you
Thank
have
you so much. This was great.
Yeah, you have your doTERRA Wellness Advocates. You can talk about these oils. I recommend getting the book. I got it while we were on the call. And Amanda, it's just such a pleasure to have you. You have such an intuitive sense and experience. I love that you bring both of those together to really legitimize like this work. It's so important, like that we move to this future of where essential oils can be talked about in a group and it not feel like it's kind of strange or out there, which I really feel we're getting there. It's for sure there in Israel. I did not feel that way in Israel at all. And I think it's a coming along in the United States where it's a legitimate science. I mean, it is. And it's a legitimate healing modality. And just so the work you're doing is incredible to make this movement in that direction.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it. It's been a privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Hannah, as always, you keep inviting me to Israel. I'm going to get back there again.
Yeah.
Grab Kara on your way.
Yeah, there you go. And Yael, you might be up there in northern Israel by the time I come back.
Wherever we are, we will be very glad to have you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
We really enjoyed
oh, thank you, Yael. I appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I love speaking to all of you. Stay in touch. Email me, send me a message on Facebook. I'd love to stay in touch, or we can WhatsApp.
Right. Join Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Take care all.
Everybody.